Iceland. It's a country known for its stunning natural beauty, glaciers, volcanoes, Bjork. But in the early 2000s, Iceland became famous for something else entirely, a massive financial meltdown. How did this happen? Let's rewind. Before 2001, Iceland's banking system was, well, kind of boring, small, conservative. Then deregulation hit. Banks were unleashed. They could lend more freely, take bigger risks, and chase those sweet, sweet profits. Suddenly, Icelandic banks were everywhere. They weren't just lending to local fishermen anymore. They were buying up assets like crazy in other countries. Things were booming, but remember that old saying, if it seems too good to be true? Yeah, this was one of those times. Fueled by deregulation, Icelandic banks went on a borrowing and spending spree. They snapped up businesses, they offered ridiculously high interest rates to foreign investors. Money flooded into Iceland, everyone was getting rich, well, almost everyone. Remember those risky loans the banks were throwing around? Turns out many of them weren't exactly, shall we say, sound investments. Property prices skyrocketed, creating a giant bubble. Iceland's economy was turning into a financial house of cards built on a foundation of debt and speculation. This couldn't last forever, and it didn't. The year was 2008. The global financial crisis hit. Remember that? Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, all that fun stuff. Yeah, well, Iceland got hit harder than most. See, those Icelandic banks that were so busy partying with other people's money, they suddenly found themselves short on cash. The music stopped and it was time to pay the piper. But they couldn't. Iceland's three largest banks, Glitnir, Landsbanki and Kaupthing, went belly up in a matter of weeks. The Icelandic krona, the country's currency, went into freefall. Inflation soared, interest rates skyrocketed. It was, to put it mildly, a complete and utter disaster. Imagine your country's entire banking system imploding. That's what Iceland was dealing with. The government, desperate to stop the bleeding, took drastic measures. First, they slapped on capital controls, essentially locking down the country's money to prevent a mass exodus of capital. Then, they nationalized the three failed banks, taking them over to prevent a total financial meltdown, but that wasn't enough. Iceland, facing bankruptcy, had to go begging for help. They turned to the International Monetary Fund, IMF, for a bailout loan. The price, austerity measures, spending cuts, tax hikes, tough times were ahead. Section 5, the People's Fury Pots, Pans and Protests. Icelanders, known for their stoic nature, were not happy. They had watched their economy crumble, their savings evaporate and their futures thrown into uncertainty, and they blamed their leaders. Protests erupted in Reykjavik, the capital city. Thousands took to the streets, banging pots and pans, demanding accountability. They wanted the politicians and bankers who had led them into this mess held responsible. The protests worked, the government collapsed. New elections were held. The message was clear. Icelanders were in no mood for business as usual. Section 6, From Ashes to Aurora. Iceland's remarkable comeback. The years after the crisis were tough, austerity measures bit hard, but Iceland, a nation forged in the fires of volcanoes and ice storms, proved resilient. The weak krona, while initially a curse, became a blessing in disguise. It made Iceland a bargain destination for tourists. And tourists came in droves, eager to experience the country's otherworldly landscapes and soak in geothermal spas. The government, to its credit, made tough choices. They let the failed banks' overseas operations go bankrupt, protecting domestic depositors. They focused on sustainable industries like fishing and tourism. They invested in renewable energy. Slowly but surely, Iceland began to recover. Section 7, Lessons from the Land of Fire and Ice, a global warning. Iceland's story is a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked greed and financial recklessness. It shows what can happen when banks are allowed to run amok, when regulators fail to regulate, and when a country's economy becomes overly reliant on a fragile financial sector. The Icelandic saga highlights the importance of strong financial regulations, prudent lending practices, and a healthy dose of skepticism when someone promises you quick and easy riches. It also underscores the need for a robust social safety net to protect citizens during times of economic hardship. Iceland learned its lesson the hard way. The rest of the world would be wise to pay attention. Section 8. Never again, Iceland's financial firewall. In the aftermath of the crisis, Iceland embarked on a path of financial reform. They implemented stricter regulations for banks, increased oversight of the financial sector, and took steps to reduce systemic risk. They also established a Financial Stability Council to monitor the financial system and identify potential threats. Iceland's post-crisis reforms were not just about preventing another meltdown. They were about rebuilding trust. Trust in the banking system, trust in the government, and trust in the future. The country's experience serves as a powerful reminder that while financial crises can be devastating, they can also be opportunities for reflection, reform, and renewal. Iceland, a nation that rose from the ashes of financial ruin, stands as a testament to the enduring human spirit and the power of collective action.